everyone. So today I'm going to try to do several articles in 30 minutes. And this is 19 articles and one book, and it's part of the stuff I work with in the civics to try to make sure I understand as much as possible the topic to help in the drafting and ratification group. It has many ideas and in terms of how we treat constitutions. So I hope this will be useful for others and to show like a tiny drop of the work that goes into trying to think about this in the civics group. So let's start. Um, First one, paradox of self-amendment. A study of logic law and omnipotent change. So this is a really important topic. So how do we propose changes to the constitution? Uh, there's a lot of philosophical questions there in terms of how you can do that. And it's really important for blockchain constitutions because theoretically they can change quite fast with being on-chain with hashes. There's a lot of discussions, like should parts of the constitution be modular? Should it be one single constitution? Should it be with the guardrails in one part of it and the constitution itself in another part? But all of this raises the simple paradox, the paradox of self-amendment. So how do you stop yourself from creating illogical rules for how you can change the constitution? And for example, there's different principles you can have to this. So one is that what is logical impossible must be legally impossible or impermissible. So therefore incorrect. And as they conclude here, that the author of this paper is not really is not really a fan of that logic. Um, so it let's go through more. Like it's quite a long since I've done this myself, but I'm just reviewing the highlights I did. Um, the Yeah, so one of these ways is like if there's something omnipotent that you can just decide whatever you want. So the ADA holder has the ultimate choice, and they can rewrite the rules if the rule says you can only change the constitution under certain conditions, and that doesn't matter because on the blockchain you can just then hard fork and then create another rule set, and yeah, you have the ultimate power. Uh, or being legally omnipotent, basically. Um, then and then there's a question: if you are omnipotent, how do you then handle this problem of being immutable? So there's supposed to be a set of rules and it's like a track of a ledger of how things improve. How can you do that if you're omnipotent and you can change the rules that flip of a switch? Then you have a problem in terms of immutability. So that's the other part of this dilemma. And then they discussed that truly immutable rules will be under dogmatic constraints on liberty, even if their content proposed to protect the democratic institutions. Um, so this is a really important point, I think. Even if you make something like you really try to protect the, like say the tri-party of power, and you try to enshrine that in a rule that cannot be changed, like if that is immutable, then you are constraining the governance to self-evolve, to reject, for example, to use CC in the future. Um, so, uh, but at the same time, if you are fully on that side of the fence where you're omnipotent and either holder can do absolutely anything, you risk potentially destroying a lot of the immutability. You could rewrite the rules of the blockchain. So clearly, like for blockchain governance, we might need to find some form of middle ground here in this philosophical debate. Um, and they discuss like what really is the force behind change, and it could be legal validity. It's a matter of power and social practice, not the abstract correctness of the rule. Uh, and that it's okay if you do like self-reference and self-application, even if that creates a logical flaw, as long as you have a like a legitimacy through voter and that you find some meaning in this way of doing things. Uh, and then like uh, then there's like all of these like rule sets to try to re- fix this self-amendment problem, like to make it trans-temporally validated, and yeah, all kinds of like ad hoc solutions. And my general thing about that is ad hoc solution is really usually a bad solution to a problem, because it's like an added on solution to a problem instead of solving the problem from the ground up. And then there's the acceptance model, makes the validity of new rules dependent on the complex of social practices, and in turn they depend on a complex social practice, and it's um, so it's more like the people's power, basically. And whatever the people accept is what will be the true rules of the how you change the constitution. Procedure model, and if you accept that the procedure is lawful, then whatever is in the first constitution versus the second, it's okay if there's inconsistency as long as the procedure itself was followed. It's like sort of like a healing model in terms of like reconciling logical problems and reconciling differences and errors. Uh, yeah, I'm gonna discuss different types of this. Omnipotence versus immutable. And then they have like some tests, like 4 tests of inconsistency, forms of logic, so Denontic test, compliance test. It's actually quite complex. I remember I was fairly deep into this when I was really studying how we will change the constitution, but now I'm not remembering everything. um, but again, like the acceptance model. Acceptance models hold that the ultimate rule of recognition is authorized by the acceptance and usual of the people and official of the system. And I think it's a nice model. Like in the end of things, like why do we have rules? Why do we have constitutions? Well, it's usually like some form of social rules to unite and make it effective to collaborate together. So rules are ways of collaborating and finding decision-making systems together. So for me, the acceptance models makes a lot of sense, because it's focusing on what's the ultimate end means of constitutions. It's the people and their usage of the governance system. Um, yeah, and I conclude there the ADA holder is the same in this acceptance model. Um, then I have discussing all of these like logical flaws, how to reconcile them, yada yada. Um, yeah, and they yeah, just reconciling all of these logical flaws. And again, this direct acceptance theory, the second nuanced version of this acceptance theory that the author is a fan of. And basically, they're saying no rule is absolutely immutable. So again, there's no rule that is fixed forever, that cannot be changed. And again, everything comes from the power of the people. And I would relate that to blockchain governance. Yes, and actually that's a really important philosophical point here. So is it the blockchain itself that has priority, or is it the people on the blockchain that has priority? And if you follow this philosophy, you are saying that it's the people who have the ultimate power of the blockchain. And you can say that there's like algorithmic superiority, where the algorithm, let's say guardrail, has superiority in terms of what is in the constitution versus in the guardrail. But if you ultimately accept that any rule in the constitution comes from the ADA holder's acceptance of that constitution, then really it's not the code that is the ultimate rule, it's the people and the ADA holder who have that power. So it's actually a really nice philosophical point. So yeah, that's about how you have some philosophical problems with self-reference during changing from one constitution to another, and if it should be fully immutable or if it should be omnipotent, where you can do whatever you want. And conclusion is ADA holder and direct power from the people. That's the conclusion. Um, so then we have our reports on blockchain. This was when we were comparing about human rights, and it's really cool. It's looking at how human rights can be implemented through blockchain. Let's see if I had some cool points on that one. Yeah, so for example, in providing identity to refugees, like all of these identity solutions could be huge for that. Supporting unbanked solution, they mentioned Kiva. By the way, we have a Cardano community for Kiva. I'm one of the administrators there, so it's really cool to see the giving spirit of the Cardano community and supporting each other. Supporting labor rights. This for me one is really cool. Like smart contracts could create transparent records of employment. So that is such a better contract than what so many people across the world have. Some people don't even have a contract, and if you can, and but most people have a phone these days. Even in the very poorest regions, like there's usually one person having a phone, and if you can have a contract through a phone, and that could set some terms that are objectively, that's a huge benefit. So, and it is like a human right even for in Western or rich countries as well. Like just to have it so much more easily quantifiable, and you can do all kinds of like new ways of doing things. Like instead of having a monthly salary, you could have updates in daily or weekly, and the smart contracts could change parameters. Like it just opens up for so many things. But at the bottom of it, as long as it's objectively secured to be the facts that you signed for, then you are securing labor rights. So that's really cool. Of course, it has to be done with great care to ensuring it's used to promote labor rights, not deteriorate them. But definitely there's a potential in smart contracts for labor rights. So I thought that was cool. Um, Land titles in Ghana, keeping property deeds on public ledger, obviously a good use case. Then you have this centralized justice system. We'll talk about this in another article, but this is really cool. Like dispute or yeah, different kinds of resolution mechanisms for disputes is really cool. I'll go back to that in another article, but that's definitely a potential. Okay, so compliance in terms of data controller, also a potential. Uh, Centralized justice have a lot of potential for economic efficiency. So I agree with that. That's a really cool observation by the people who wrote that article. Immutability may cause problems with nullifying or terminating contracts. That's an interesting point. So that's a thing you need to get around. Self-executing code could lose a lot of flexibility of traditional language. I agree with this. This is why I say there should be some form of appealability in smart contracts. That's in another article, but I agree with this. Like from the first, the DAO hack could have been solved so much better if the Ethereum DAO hack had appealability for its smart contract. But yeah. So you want immutability, but you want appealability when it's a majority solution want that, or other safeguard mechanism making it a fair governance. So immutability plus governance is a powerful combination. Dispute mechanisms allow parties to defer problems to a court or arbitration. So yeah, not only for self-disputes, but the arbitration tribunal could be a use case. Pretty cool. And DAOs, obviously. Yeah, I like this, like rights to liberty and security. So you could, this pseudonymity actually gives you security and liberty. That's pretty cool observation. Yeah, so what this tells me, blockchain constitutions has potential to increase human rights for people. So for me, this is one of the main reasons why I put so much energy and effort into this. Like this truly has the potential to make it humanity better off. It's like it really I see the path so clearly. Like you see here the examples, and they're all real examples. Great work by the Professor Florence G. Sel and Florian Martin Barretro. I can't pronounce, I butcher that, but French last name. But yeah, University of Ottawa in Canada, I guess. Um, Highly recommend it. The impact of blockchain for human rights, democracy, and rule of law. Check that out. What else? Next one. So this was from Agalos. I think this one was really cool. Stratified approach to blockchain decentralization. Let's see if we can do the main points. So yeah, Agalos actually posted today his 11 tenets. So this guy, I really love his work, and he has so many cool thoughts about this. Some of them are conflicting, but all of them are hugely important and gives you a lot to think about. So it's really cool. So one of his main points is like security via decentralization alone is a bit problematic. You need to have no single points of failure. So decentralization in say number of nodes is not enough. So yeah, this isn't decentralized or not. It's not nuanced enough. And it's not a goal in itself to decentralize. What you want is security, stability, and efficiency sometimes. And you need to try to make it synergetic to that. So decentralization should be designed in a way that promotes security, stability, and hopefully also efficiency. So for example, if you can utilize more nodes to do something with a higher throughput, you're also even increasing efficiency. And this is like, I have fought so hard for this. Like, I really want the principle of resilience in our constitution. It doesn't look like I get it fully, but it's there and reflected in a lot of the language, the spirit of resilience. But for me, it's such a key point of blockchains. And over time, that's how you actually thrive in a competitive environment, is if you are resilient to that environment and you can survive hostile actions against you. So for me, it's such an important point. So resilience to single points of failure, it's such a great point. And I highly recommend people to think about that. How can we make Cardano resilient to single points of failure? Some examples like geographical resilience, not being reliant upon a few regions, hardware resilience, types of hardware, resilience in terms of ISPs, layer 0, resilience in terms of legal points of attacks, like if there's just 4 organizations, can be shut down through the legal layer, or human layer, I mean. So yeah, resilience, and across all the vectors of the blockchain, not just one place, not just the node itself, but yeah, resilience in terms of like node software. We have currently, it's working on a Rust implementation, and we have the Haskell implementation, but yeah, resilience, hugely important. And he calls like decentralized across all layers. So yeah, I really like this, and this is a lot of the governance research. It's looking at the different layers of governance and the layers of blockchains. It's a good framework for looking at these types of things. I think I highlighted most of his articles, so that just tells you how much I like his work. What else is important? Yeah, here you see like the different layers to decentralization: governance, clients, tokenomics, consensus network, software, hardware, and such an important point. And I like this one, like he talks about 2 security properties, safety and liveness. So that you all hold the same settled view of the ledger, the safety, and liveness reflect the ability to update the ledger settled view regularly as new transactions are submitted. So yeah, that's actually really important. Like, sure, it's great if you finalize some form of safe settled point, but you need to have some form of liveness. You can't have that in 2000 years in the future. So it just like shows you the nuanced things you need to have, or properties, to truly have a resilient blockchain. And We have transaction finality and censorship resistance. This is currently a tenant, I believe, in the draft, and I love it. And I believe it was from this article. I certainly maybe thought about it before, but certainly expressed here. So very cool. Privacy, so that you have a certain degree of dissociation from the real identity. Again, from the last article we saw, like how that even can enable human rights. So I agree. Then all of these like layers and what you need to have decentralized, and the bootstrapping now. So we are definitely already doing this. So before you had to actually manually set the IPs. Now you actually can set who you will connect to get the information from the rest of the network. We also have Mithril. It's fairly centralized in terms of the bootstrapping nodes, but it's getting better. These are types of properties we should be having KPIs on, and we should be growing our resilience. So again, for me, it should have been a principle or a tenet all the way. I'm really sad that not more people are focusing on that, because for me, it's a whole like core reason you have the trust assumptions you have in blockchains, because it's supposed to be able to not be attacked. So resilience should be a principle. What else is important? This one. Oh, this is a great point. So self-healing ability, and this is actually a weakness in proof of stake. So in proof of work, you can self-heal fairly easily because you can onboard more resources when someone is attacking. Of course, this argument forgets to mention that the attacker can also onboard more. So level of self-healing has to be considered with ability for the attacker to increase his resource spendage as well. In proof of stake, the problem is that a lot of ADA could be locked, but that is also a problem for the attacker. So, but when the attack has enough, and if you're trying to compensate, if everything is locked up, then it's very hard to self-heal in a proof of stake system. So that's actually a really important point. So that is maybe also KPI, like how much of ADA is locked and how easy is it to have liquidity for ADA so that in case of attacks, people are able to buy and support more. It's a cool point. Let's see what else is really important. Yeah, so I like this like price of anarchy in terms of effective governance. I think effective governance should and sort of is expressed as a principle through all of the way the governance is designed on Cardano, but it does have to consider some price in terms of anarchy and delay in how decisions are made. And we already see this playing out, and it's fine. It's fine that the CC don't all have time to vote on everything, for example, or that the DREPs are slowly onboarding and it takes time. It's not forced on anyone. It's a decentralized permissionless system. And yeah, it could be more effective if we forced to vote or whatever, but I like it. It's a good point. You have to contrast these two things. Else, yeah, and legal entities is a problem, and this is an interesting argument. So stablecoins are a vulnerability if they are from a single asset issuer. I will add to that, like also it's a problem if stablecoin becomes too popular on an ecosystem, and when there's a hard fork, they can actually decide based on their values. To say there's 60% of the activity of the blockchain, even if everyone on the blockchain wants to vote for another hard fork, if they move to the other hard fork, then 60% of the value is gone. That has a lot of sway and influence. So, but I don't agree that it has to be a single issuer. So you can have co-issuers for stable coins with that's assets backed. So it's certainly possible to come around this problem. Yeah, so that's that article. Let's move on. We try to speed on. I probably will not make it in half an hour. So adaptive governance networks. So legal resilience is a cool concept, and I fully agree. That is also something we need to have as perspective. let's do this one quick because it's the main point is already very clear. Like you need resilience. For blockchain network, resilience and adaptability come down to the question: what are the values of the network, which is unchangeable? What is the core? Again, in the philosophical, what is immutable? What is the core system behavioral structure? What will the network display resilience? And when is resilience desirable? And what are the trade-offs the networks are willing to make over other normative goals of there in order to reach resilience? And guess what? There's a common theme in my readings is resilience, and legal resilience is also important. So you don't want one single membership-based organization that is in current one legal jurisdictions only. That's a point of attack. You don't want entities only in one legal jurisdiction. That's the point of attack, etc., etc. That's the main point of that article. Let's move on. Defining blockchain governance principle, a comprehensive network. This is a cool one for like making some theoretical comparison. This was some of the work I did when I like tried to look at the design. And again, here human values is adaptability, credibility, security, and fairness. Fully agree with these things. And that's how I view blockchains. They have a human layer. Yeah, and then it's talk about off-chain and on-chain governance and defining that. It's also very useful. Level of decentralizations on different and defining like different types of blockchains useful. How you provide stakeholder alignment incentives to achieve consensus and analyzing these different principles, the level of decentralization, stakeholder alignment incentives, enable transparent decision process for trust, support role-based accountability, extended to ecosystem level governance. Again, this is actually what Ben O'Harlan is doing, is like doing ecosystem mapping. That's actually really important for governance as well, just to identify who are the actors of that governance space. And legal compliance and ethical responsibility. This one is super cool, like defining and comparing, contrasting. This could probably be a Cardano paper where we contrast with all of the different Ethereum, Dash, Tezos, Hyperledger. So maybe one day I will have time to make that. This one is also really nice, like comparison results. This is how they do decision right, accountability, ecosystem lifecycle, legal regulations, ethical responsibilities, if it's covered, partially covered, or not covered. Super cool. We should do something like that for Cardano. Okay, next article. On this one is a review of blockchain governance, like a meta article. And they look at what's common, where are they published, common questions they want to answer through all of the different analytics they have done on the article. So what is the blockchain governance? Why is blockchain governance adopted? Where is blockchain enforced? When is blockchain governance applied? Who is involved? What's the blockchain governance designed? So okay questions to ask. And they link to the different studies. Very neat. If I ever do a metadata study on this, this is a neat way of organizing. That was cool. But they do have some cool insights. So this one I probably recommend to read as well. And they, for example, the 3 dimensions of decision rights, accountability and incentives, and where they should align with the decentralization levels of deployed blockchains. It's a cool point. And this, for me, adaptability is a really important point. And upgradability and security, fairness, accountability, privacy, censorship resistance. Cardano is fairly good on all this, but we should make that comparison study. This one was, oh yeah, this is something people don't think about. So termination phase, actually how, for example, for partner chains, and if a partner chain fail, or if Cardano ever were to fail, what will the rules be for the termination of the blockchain? It's a simple thing to think like this will be for eternity, but responsible governance will even have some form of termination phase, and we don't have that currently. So yeah, I think it's an important and cool insight. So one of the reasons they have some small gems in this article. This one was, yeah, cross-chain voting. So I'm thinking a lot about what part of the constitution would work for partner change. Could they adopt the rules if they wanted to or not? and how about the resources among the different chain, how will it work in a multi-chain world or a multi-resource secured blockchain world. So cross-chain voting, really important topic. I will definitely say I'm not fully taught out on that topic, but it's really important to start to think about that, because clearly that's a place where blockchain space is headed. So that, I thought that was a neat one also, like insight wise. Next one, analyzing decision making and blockchain in blockchain governance. Let's see what's important from this one. Yeah, so Bitcoin, it's the nodes that does the decision making process. And nodes can choose not to forward transaction or hash blocks coming from a miner that does not support a specific BIP. It puts economic pressure on the miner, and it's called user active soft fork. Really interesting point. So we can see something like this on Cardano as well. Like some transactions enter a mempool. You can choose who you are in contact with in the rest of the network, and potentially even soft sensor through this. So it's something we should be thinking a bit about how we deal with in the governance space of Cardano as well. I like this, like, yeah, the levels of community drivenness of the blockchain. Cardano now is sky high on community driven. It's amazing. And is it off-chain focus or on-chain focus? I would say we're smack in the middle. Like, we are here, we're highly community driven, and we're both focusing on the off-chain processes and the on-chain processes. And we're definitely no longer institution driven. And I would say Bitcoin is further down here. There's a few institutions or organizations that are really driving a lot of the work. It's definitely still community driven. It's here somewhere. But what Cardano is doing now, and Cardano, let's be real, Cardano started here, but I think they are starting to surpass Bitcoin in terms of community drivenness. Everything in Cardano is community driven, and it's a very wide and diverse community driving the process now going forward. So yeah, that was that article. How to build digital trust and security in democracy through information governance strategies and blockchain technologies. What is important in this article that I remember? Nothing. Let's see. Oh, this one was important. So yeah, it just highlights the importance of trust and digital trust as a critical mediator between information governance and blockchain technologies. Why was that important? I don't remember, to be honest. Well, okay, so yeah, you have accountability, you have transparency, but if you do not trust or have some form of verification of resources for transparency or for holding people accountable, the whole system fall apart. So yeah, this is true. Digital trust is the critical mediator. That was the main point. I think I don't think there was any really important ones in this one. Well, digital literacy is important for widespread adoption. This is so true. And how do you have digital trust if you don't understand fully the system? So educational components is actually key for the governance system to work. That is why the civic group should have educational components in all of the stuff they're doing. And it's actually not just for the sake of education itself, but because that establishes trust, and that trust again is actually the critical mediator for having transparency and accountability. I guess those were the main points in that one. What is a constitution? This is more like a legal one. Like, what is such constitution usually built up as? Fundamental legal political rules, binding, concern structure and operation of the institution of government, political principle, and rights of citizens, are have widespread public legitimacy, so it should be unifying. Harder to change in ordinary laws, meet the international recognized criteria for democratic systems in terms of representation and human rights, Another cool reason why we should have human rights, because we will fit under this framework of what is a constitution, so we have a higher chance of being adopted by other nations. So that's something to think about. And usually they have this trilemma, the governance trilemma between being legal system, social system, and political system. And we see this clearly in Cardano. So we have the DREPs being a power system, we have the CCs being a legal system, we have the ADA holders being a culture system, and even also the MBOs arguably. And I will put the SBOs somewhere in middle here. They are sort of governance, political, and also sort of just the culture and expression of the blockchain itself. So yeah, that's a cool governance trilemma for you there. For anyone wanting to write something about that, I think that's enough for that article. Open access, huge, long, really cool book. But the main point for me in this one is very simple. On Cardano, is the stuff we publish public domain, or could someone withhold, for example, rationale from a CC, or withhold what was written as a governance action? Could you be sued for storing governance information? Should we perhaps include in the rules that it's actually public domain what you publish? Done. Next one. So special jurisdictions, laboratories of governance, really cool. There's a lot of different like special legal zones across the world, and this is clearly something that has potential for Cardano as well to establish the Cardano constitution. Yeah, I think that's all I will say about this article, but it was a good read. Towards the participator digital ethnography of blockchain governance. What was important in this one? Yeah, just highlights how much the off-chain deliberation is important together with the on-chain, and this is how I view it as well. The human layer is so important to blockchain governance. What that was so important, I don't remember. 3 exclamation marks. I really like this. Why? There's a growing awareness within blockchain community that decentralized governance, particularly when tokens are involved, can leave the systems and the constitution vulnerable. Yeah, okay, so decentralization itself actually can make you vulnerable. That is true in some cases. The level of engagement in the voting process included votes, the influence of those holding. Yeah, oh, okay, so yeah, it was like sort of a realization to myself. Like, it doesn't matter if you're so decentralized or not, like, or if you have a governance that's fantastically decentralized. If people aren't participating in that decentralized system, it all falls apart. It's really dependent on that human layer. Like if we don't have enough DREP activity, if we don't, what will the CCs vote on? How will they establish practices or case law, or even just how they interpret the constitution? How will actions enable more economy activity? So all of this depends on the people and the activity they have in their governance system. So just for me, reinforces the fact that at the end of the day, it's a human layer to every blockchain. There was anything else I wanted to highlight? No, I think that's enough for that one. Blockchain governance, de facto design. That's important here. They also talk about how we make it compliant with GDPR, the EU laws for data. Defining like questions regarding decision rights, accountability, incentives. Yeah, it's always important to have these questions when you design a constitution. And the why, and all of this should be defined. The why. So the preamble we have currently, I feel we should do more in terms of the why, and when, what, who, where, and how. I like this framework actually for thinking about legal structures. What is temporal and change over time? That's actually a cool thing to think about and investigate. and what are you actually storing in governance? Again, like we just talked about, how should something be public domain or not? What is immutable? What is, like, for example, verifiable reconstructability? Currently, we are having something on chain, but they also reference data that could be on chain and it could not be on chain. It could be to a Google document for all we care. So even if you are able to say that what's on the blockchain can be reconstructed, it's hard to guarantee that for things that's referenced. So the what is actually an important question to ask as well. And if there's a difference in access or power granted to actors in the system based on their geographical location, that's actually a cool example. So in the very early days in incentivized testnet on German, we had a lot of nodes in Germany because that was where the latency was lower and they had better performance and less crash and had to be restarted and had better rewards. And yeah, currently I would say we are fairly diverse, but this is something we should be measuring, so it should be part of our resilience. This one was my favorite probably article I read, Cracking the Code Remix for Humans and Machine. It just has so many cool concepts to think about. And it's smart for a blockchain to be thinking about creating rules that are compliant and machine consumable from the start. And maybe it should even be a tenet that we should strive for a language that makes it machine consumable. It's a really cool concept, rules as code. And that's what enables digital governance. And if a government is to be effective, it must be keep pace with the speed and direction of change happening around it. If that's accepted, then it's surely necessary that one of the most fundamental functions of government, rulemaking, does likewise. And that's so true. This is key insight. Like, most constitutions and most rulemaking has not iterated fast. It's been very slow process in human history for a long time. With blockchain governance, we can iterate so much faster and we can make governance more effective, and it should be a principle effective governance. And we should be making KPIs for our governance, and we should be driving change like guardrails, automating stuff. And yeah, there's so much potential in this for changing the way rule making works. I like that insight. What else was a really good insight? I really recommend people to read this one. Like, the human rights one article, and this one is stuff I will really recommend to read. And this was like pure gold for me. For successful rules of code, you need transparency, traceability, accountability, availability, and interoperability, secure governments. But this one was like schmacky. So appropriateness and appealability. Appropriateness requires that consideration be given to the question if rule of code approach is suitable for a given area or problem. That is something you should be thinking about. Is for example, it appropriate to use a guardrail, or should it be a social code, or is it appropriate and is effective as a rule, as a code, or a guardrail, as we define it on Cardano? Then appealability. In the event of errors or an unfair application of a rule using a machine consumable form, there must also be a mechanism that allows the code version to be corrected and appealed. I discussed this in Builderfest with and had a panel, like a session, and among them were Gimbal Labs, and they are going to look at some concept of appealability for smart contracts. I think this is like so crucial. Yes, rules as written, rules as code is important things, but you don't want to be stuck in a hard fork because you can't change it going forward, because there's no way to appeal to a guardrail. We solve this currently by not having guardrails for hard forks, but what if some types of guardrails actually should have the human element of appealability? So just in case there are errors, we are able to change them. Of course, the threshold for the appealability should be very high, but it should be there. And I think there's so much potential into exploring this concept of appealability. This is such a key concept to understand. I talked about cross-chain governance as a key thing for the future. I think also this appealability is a key concept to wrap your mind around. Mm, yeah, but yeah, this highly recommend. Read this. This is cool. Cracking the code, rulemaking for humans and machines. Next, the creative forces of self-organization. What's important here? Uh, so this is more about having this sociocratic method, if I remember correctly, with the different circles. It's really cool, and it's something for the membership-based organizations. And they try to reduce tension, and yeah, it's just a way of promoting actually collaboration instead of tension, and resolving conflict. So yeah, it is cool. I do a lot of this, but for the sake of time, I will move on to the next article. Governance of blockchain system, the great one. This one is great. Check that one out. Governance of blockchain system. Uh, Here they truly explore this concept of different layers of decentralization. Um, yeah, protocol layer, blockchain layer, DApp layer, framework of the DApp. It's smart. Uh, I recommend this one. Categories, so rules regulating or external to the blockchain itself or inside the blockchain itself. It's also a useful concept. Governance by or governance of. It's very useful framework. Yeah, I recommend reading that one as well. Political, economic, and governance strategies of blockchain users. This was basically, I think it was Ethereum conference. They made a social study. It was nice, but if you're into that stuff, if you want to know how the Denver population like Ethereum, then you can read this one. Decentralized justice, state of the art, recurring criticism, next generation research topic. So I covered this in another governance video I did just now. Really cool articles, fantastic work, and this one is the Kleos one. There is one main problem I have with this article is that it does not incentivize dissenting voice. It really just tries to incentivize like majority rule. And why is that not good? It's because usually over history of law, a lot of dissenting voices has created new legal theory and new understandings. So dissenting voices are important, and for some things this fits perfectly, but it's nuanced and it causes turn of the commons in some situations. So it's really cool, but look at my video where I go more into this one. Constitution and blockchain. Oh, fantastic. Eric Alson. He's such a good writer in like precise articles. I'm probably influenced by having worked with him a bit, and damn, he have a cool jazz collection. But I really like Eric Alson as a thinker in the legal space and the blockchain space. I have so much respect for him. But for me, like I drew inspiration from this. So he talks about exit cost and how on blockchain usually there's a low exit cost because you can just move to another blockchain, especially in proof of work. You just change what you're mining. I drew that further. Like I would like to see low exit cost on Cardano to other partner chains, so that you could, if you don't like the rule sets on Cardano and the Cardano contribution, you could have a low exit cost to a partner chain where there's other rules, and that way we keep the value in the ecosystem while we retain this like all of the nice properties of exit, the low exit cost that Eric Alston really nicely described in this paper. It's a fantastic paper. Check that out as well. Okay, next and last one. Hopefully I push this into a half an hour. Maybe I'm a bit more than that, but okay. The boon and the bane of blockchain. Oh, this one was a bit cool. It was about different organizations. So if you're an organization psychologist, you will love this article. But for the rest of us, I think they had some insight. We're probably a consortium or a custodian, sort of here somewhere. And the different entities are in the different, we're chiefs, so it's such a centralized one ICC with different councils. SBO's fairly circular in terms of each power. You have a saturation limit, so you have a limit to the power of each, so they're equal. There's game theory on how many of them. Custodian, more one main. So I guess I would say before we were custodian with the entities being this main and all of the other flowing from that. And we're definitely moving to a consortium with all the different MBOs and the power within that MBO not being decided by one entity or one organization, but multiple organizations. So that's where we're moving, and it's a nice article, and they really cool, in a cool way, define and give examples how these different organizations are. So with that said, that was 19 articles and one book in hopefully not that long time. Thank you.